Thanks for joining into the Lab Talk. You're looking at Representative Jamie Raskin, represents the great state of Maryland's 8th Congressional District, ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, author of a great book, Unthinkable. I only have the congressman for 17 minutes, so I told him I'm going to think fast and I'm going to talk fast. I'm going to give him a lot, and I know he can do it. We were on a panel together. He's a lawyer, a professor, so he's prepared for this. Congressman Raskin, my take on Donald Trump is that he is a completely compromised, corrupt, authoritarian leader who will try to stay in power by any illegal and I would even say violent means necessary. Just to get the record straight, do you agree with my assessment of Donald Trump and his intentions?
Well, it's well established. I think that's a succinct and lucid description of what we're dealing with. I mean, I was there on January 6th. I led the House impeachment team in the Senate trial. We got 57 senators to agree with us that he had incited a violent insurrection as a way to advance a political coup against American democracy. Unfortunately, that 57 to 43 result, no matter how robust our bipartisan majorities were and bicameral majorities were, it was not enough because it's a two-thirds threshold to get to. And there have been four presidential impeachment trials in American history. Andrew Johnson for his crimes against Reconstruction, Bill Clinton for doing you know what, and then the two Trump impeachment trials. He's got 50% of the impeachment trials in American history, and that was the closest we ever came to a bipartisan majority convicting a president, and it wasn't enough. So we tried him. We had bicameral majorities saying he had done it, but we didn't convict him, and so we were not able to disqualify and remove him. And I think this is why I hold Mitch McConnell very responsible for the situation we're in today. But that's water under the bridge. And we got to move forward and continue to fight for democracy and freedom in our country and around the world.
See, I'm petty. I don't move on. I keep all the receipts, and I believe that we should keep the receipts because Donald Trump is a convicted criminal who should have gone to jail. And this is a man who's failed up in life due to his whiteness, his wealth, his celebrity, and now the Republican cult. Unfortunately, what we have right now is a situation where the only opposition is the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party, as you know, Congressman Raskin, has its lowest favorability rating in 30 years. And a poll came out that said a majority of Americans do not have faith in the current leadership, not you, but the current leadership, because the current leadership has not stepped up to address this threat that you and I both agree that Donald Trump and the Republican Party represents to the American public and the democracy. I saw you yesterday. You did a fantastic job against Nigel Farage. You grilled him for 4 minutes, Donald Trump's ally, Putin's ally, and people want to see that type of a robust fight against Donald Trump and the Republicans. I have to ask you, sir, you know the polls. Do you right now have faith and confidence in this current Democratic leadership to keep this democracy safe from Donald Trump and his authoritarian ambitions?
Yes, absolutely. I've got that confidence and that optimism of the will because we're going to make it happen. And I've seen millions of people fighting all over the country. I saw it on No King's Day. I was out recently in York County, Pennsylvania, with Janelle Stelson, who came within 1 point of beating the insurrectionist Scott Perry. And we're going to take him down this time. And Janelle Stelson is going to be a new representative there. I was in Long Island in the 1st district. I was in the 2nd district there. We've got great, powerful new candidates and people fighting all over the country. And so we're going to make this happen. The California Democrats are fighting hard, and we're going to pass Proposition 50 to make sure that we can redistrict and countermand that extreme gerrymander that has just been foisted upon us by MAGA Republicans in Texas. So we're fighting all over the country. We are in the fight of our lives. Make no mistake, Waj. I mean, I'm not understating or trivializing the task ahead of us. It is daunting indeed, but I think we've got the will to do it. We've got the skill to do it, and we've got the forces all over America to do it. And we're going to make it happen.
I'm not. This is not a gotcha. When you said we, I heard you. I saw the examples, but that we is the people. It's grassroots efforts. It's governor of California, the governor of Illinois. Type of this patchwork resistance. Elected officials like yourself. I'm talking about the leadership, and the reality is, unfortunately, the majority of Democrats do not trust the leadership, and they also do not have faith in the party to meet the moment. The party now, I'm saying, Congressman Raskin, not you, not others. I
Sure.
give credit where credit's due. I criticize when people are worthy of criticism. Right now, what people are saying is, what is the leadership's message? What is the leadership's plan? What does the leadership stand for? Because what they're seeing the leadership do right now, Congressman Raskin, is take out Zohran Mamdani, a guy who stands for something, is going to be the next mayor of New York, has his multiracial support, and it's so disheartening for people to be like, I've seen Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries criticize Mamdani more than I have Donald Trump. I know you're in an awkward position right now, but I got to ask it. The leadership. What's the leadership doing?
Well, look, the leadership is all of us. You're part of the leadership, and I'm part of the leadership, and I'm seeing
I'm just a dad who drives a minivan. I'm not part of any leadership.
a dad driving a minivan. It sounds like a pretty good leader to me. And I'm another dad who drives a minivan. I'm still driving a minivan, even though my kids are all grown up. But I'm waiting for my grandkids to get into the minivan. Look, um, the leadership is where the crisis is, and the crisis is everywhere right now. There's an attack on colleges and universities. There's an attack on immigrants. There's an attack on women's rights, on reproductive rights. There's an attack, every day now against cities and states around the country. So the people you named are the people who've risen up because Donald Trump's coming after Chicago, where he's coming after DC. And my friends in Free DC are fighting every day, not just to defend against the nightmare of militarized law enforcement and occupation of people's neighborhoods, but for statehood, which is what the Friends of DC have been fighting for many years now, because there's no safety in an occupied status and in this subordinated political position that the people of DC have been put into. That 713,000 tax-paying, draftable Americans who have a right to statehood. And when we passed it on the House side in the 116th Congress and the 117th Congress, and I got to be the floor leader for that, I started by saying I wanted to thank the hundreds of thousands of Americans in DC who have a bona fide political grievance against Congress and yet didn't come down and beat the hell out of our police officers and injure them and wound them and hospitalize them and disfigure them and disable them. And we're going to use this fraudulent new subcommittee they're creating to revisit January 6th again within the Judiciary Committee. We're going to use that to stand up for the police officers who defended us on that day and have gotten nothing from Donald Trump while he pardoned 1,600 cop-beating insurrectionists, oath keepers, Proud Boys, three percenters, and so on. So we got millions of disenfranchised people in Puerto Rico, and we're going to be fighting for people in Puerto Rico too. Who are American citizens locked out of Congress and locked out of participation in presidential elections. Tocqueville, when he wrote Democracy in America, he observed that democracy in our country was either shrinking or it was expanding and growing. And we got to get back on the growth track. And that's up to all of us. So, I'm not.
I know. I gave you a simple and tough question at the same time. I will say, I think you would be a better leader right now for the Democrats because you're showing me the fight and a vision forward. I want to ask you this. I only have you for 8 minutes.
Can I respond to that? And we'll keep going if you need.
Yeah.
Look, well, let me just respond to that. Let me tell you what I'm doing to lead. And I've thought a lot about this. I spend my summers with high school, college age, apprentice age young people across the country. Democracy Summer. We had Heather Cox Richardson appear before them. We had Benny Thompson on the Zooms. We had Tim Snyder. We had serious organizers all around the country. And then they're implanted in the campaigns all over America where we need them, knocking on doors, registering voters, and organizing. So, when you ask about like the top line numbers for how popular the Democrats, it doesn't surprise me. It's low. Why? Because we lost to Donald Trump and we lost to MAGA, and those numbers are going to be low until we win. And we go and prove that we are the fighting party of democracy and freedom and human rights in America and for people all over the world. So I'm not going to focus on the polls. I'm going to focus on the organizing dimension of this, which is so critical.
All right. So I'm going to say, and then we'll move on. I think the Democratic Party needs new leadership. My take, Congressman Raskin, respectfully, I believe that Senator Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are not built for this fight. They're not made for this moment. I'm going to repeat this. I believe they're not built for this fight. They're not made for this moment. I'm not going to demonize them for all the good they've done, but this requires a new type of fighter who is agile and can meet the moment. Now, that's just my take. I only have you for 7 minutes, so I want to ask you a few more questions if I can. Uh, I believe there's two litmus tests for the Democratic Party moving forward. Things are changing at a rapid rate. One of the litmus tests, based on all the polls, is a majority of Democrats believe that what Israel is doing right now in Palestine is genocide, and they want to stop sending arms. This is not a gotcha. I just want to know where you are on this. Do you agree with the scholars on genocide, Human Rights Watch, Doctors Without Borders, Amnesty International, uh, Omar Bertov, that what war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu and his regime are doing in Gaza right now is a genocide?
So, first of all, I've joined the Block the Bombs legislation. And I think it's very important for us to say that those weapon systems should not go over unless there's a specific vote by the Congress to do it. And Israel will have to sign that it will comply with international law and American law to do it. Now, when people try to get me to say this wasn't a genocide, I wouldn't say it. I said this is a matter of international law and it's being considered right now. And obviously, I'm impressed by all of these scholars of genocide who are coming out and saying, stop it, this is a genocide. But I'm going to stick to the idea that that is a legal term, a juridical term, and we should follow the legal process. Meantime, whether or not it's a genocide for me is not really the question. Is it a mass slaughter of civilians taking place? Yeah, I can see that with my own eyes, that there are civilians being slaughtered, and let's stop it. Whether some people want to call it a genocide or some people don't. Let's focus on the fact there's famine, there's starvation, there are people who are being shot down waiting to get food for their families. That should be enough for the whole world to act. And we should immediately move, as we've been saying for months and months and months, for a ceasefire that will get the hostages back to their families, as the hostage families have been demanding, and hundreds of thousands of people in Israel have been demanding, and to stop the killing and the carnage that's taking place in Gaza. That's not a difficult concept. So we've got, look, Netanyahu clearly wants to keep it going, and he's got his own reasons for that. He's looking at criminal responsibility and criminal prosecution. He's got his own reasons for wanting to keep it going personally and also ideologically because of Smotrich and Ben Gvir. That is not where the world is, and that does not make Israel safe. It isolates Israel. It makes it into a pariah, and it's clearly not safe for the Palestinian people and the families who are under the gun of that military operation, which looks like it's targeted at civilians at this point.
Yeah, and I had Jeremy Ben-Ami on. I know you know him with J Street, and he said, before talking, well, while he was talking to us, he goes, "I'm not going to call it genocide." 2 days later, though, he said, "You know what? I'm not opposed to people who call it a genocide." Are you there? Are you not opposed to people
Oh,
who call it
well,
genocide?
I'm working with everybody, people who say it's definitely a genocide and people who say it's definitely not a genocide, to stop the slaughter that's taking place in Gaza, to stop the destruction of civilian life and the destruction of Palestinian society. Yeah.
And that
So
means stop sending aid and weapons.
as I've said, I'm on the Block the Bombs legislation,
Okay,
and I've
yeah,
taken
just
a lot
double.
of heat for that. But look, the main point is all of us need to be acting to arrest this catastrophe that's taking place in Gaza on a daily basis. That is a moral imperative. All of us need to be acting to stop it as quickly as possible.
So Congressman Khanna was here last week with me. I asked him the same question, and he pushed back and he said, "Okay, Waj, well, why is it so important for me to call it a genocide when you and me want the same thing?" And I agree with you. We want the same exact thing. And I just want to give my response before asking you a question. If you have a couple more minutes, it'd be great. If not, I
Please
promise your
go ahead.
team I'll get you out. But the question, he said, "Why, Waj? Why call it a genocide?" And my take on this, just for you, something you to think about, is because the United States, once you call it a genocide, you call something for what it is, for what we're witnessing right now, number one. But number two, then it triggers a legal and moral obligation of the United States and European nations who signed on to the Convention Against Genocide to stop a genocide, to do more to stop a genocide that's happening in real time, something that we've seen streamlined on our phones, and to stop sending aid. I think it gives it the proper weight when you define it for what it is. So that's just my take, Congressman. I appreciate your take on it. Something, if you can join me, maybe I can help in a way change your mind and come out and say it, because I think saying it is deeply, deeply powerful, in addition to you and me with our shared goals of ending it and also releasing the hostages. A question I want to ask you when it comes to the fight, because you're a constitutional law scholar and a professor, is we're seeing Donald Trump now openly militarize the police and unleash the National Guard, unleash ICE, unleash police officers against blue cities, against cities with black mayors, right? And the question I have is, well, who watches the watchmen when law enforcement is now deputized to go and terrorize Americans, right? And when they're acting almost like the Gestapo of the President of the United States, what can ordinary citizens do, Congressman Raskin? So this is a situation which I think people aren't really taking seriously enough. But what do you recommend as a constitutional law scholar and thinking kind of outside the box? Democratic governors and Democratic mayors, what steps should they take to protect their citizens, American citizens and residents, from a militarized police terrorizing them?
Well, first of all, we got the First Amendment for everybody. Everybody needs to be speaking up. Everybody needs to be rallying at the points of the conflict. When you see, National Guard coming into cities, people have a right to protest and say, that's not what we're about here. We're going to govern ourselves. But understand this, we're winning in court. We just won a major victory in San Francisco, United States District Court from Judge Breyer, who said that the occupation of LA by the National Guard, the militarization of law enforcement, and the deployment of the Marines violated the Posse Comitatus Act. We don't use the Army and military forces for law enforcement purposes in America. We just won a huge victory on that. And
But I don't, again, I don't want to interrupt you, Congressman Raskin. I understand. What you're saying is what we don't do. What I'm saying is the reality is that Trump doesn't care.
yeah,
Republicans don't care. They're doing it. They don't care. They're
okay, no,
doing it.
I got you and I are together on that. I don't need to be convinced of that. My point is that we've got the Constitution on our side, and people need to know that. When you go out and protest, when you go out and speak, we can say we have already won the only case that's been decided on this. Now, I agree that it's a little ambiguous because everything heads up to the Supreme Court, and we know that Supreme Court has been gerrymandered and sliced and diced by the Republicans. My constituent, Merrick Garland, never even got a hearing, much less a vote. In the Senate when President Obama nominated him to go there, so it's a court that is riddled with illegitimacy and an ethics crisis. There's a lot going on there, but the district courts have decided overwhelmingly, more than 90% of the time, on behalf of people suing Donald Trump. We have more than 200 preliminary injunctions and temporary restraining orders that have been entered against this reign of lawlessness and terror against the American people. And we're winning also overwhelmingly at the appeals court level. Our problem is the U.S. Supreme Court. So we've got the First Amendment. We've got the ability to go to court. The people in the military oppose being used for washing off graffiti or picking up litter on the mall. That's not what they're supposed to be doing. And they're not supposed to be doing law enforcement. We won a minor victory in D.C. where the federal government wanted to take over the Metropolitan Police Department, and they backed off from that when they were told, no, that's not what the Home Rule Act says. What it says is not that you can take over the police department, but the president can direct the mayor to make the police department available for a federal purpose. For a specific federal purpose. What would that be? Well, like, for example, addressing a violent insurrection at Congress, that would work. But washing graffiti off of the walls and removing the blight of homelessness, no. So just because they have corrupted the Supreme Court, and I'm totally with you, doesn't mean that we shouldn't be talking about the rule of law and the Constitution. Constitution belongs to the people, and we've got to stand up for every part of the Constitution, including the First Amendment itself and our right to speak and assemble.
I try to be a man of my word. I said I'd get you out by 5:20. I'm sure Will is waving you down right now and says, "Get out." He texted me just now. A final quick question, like literally for 30 seconds, if you can answer. I believe this is a unique moment in U.S. history where we're dealing with an authoritarian leader. You and I agree on this. And I believe it requires bold leadership and an agility to think outside the box. When it comes to the Supreme Court, you mentioned it, sir. The final, if you will, check for this Republican Party and this authoritarian regime is the Supreme Court, which I believe is filled with right-wing hacks. Is it time to expand the court? Can we finally talk about it?
Well, of course, it would be time to expand the court right now because it's a nightmare, but we have no power to do that. Um, so, um,
But you're for it? Would you support me in saying it's time to expand the court? Should this be a mainstream talking point if it continues on this way?
Yeah, I mean, we may as well say it's time for the court to start ruling on behalf of the people and the Constitution. I mean, that's just magical thinking. I mean, I've been on bills about what you're talking about doing, and I've got no problem doing that. But it doesn't need to be a litmus test for anybody. We need to use all of the tools at our disposal right now in order to fight the authoritarians and the autocrats and the plutocrats and the theocrats that are destroying American constitutional democracy. So once we win back Congress and we win back the presidency, we will be able to discuss how we prevent ourselves from ever getting into that situation again. But right now, because of Thomas, because of Alito, because of their collaboration with Trump, because of the presidential or post-presidential immunity decision, because of Bush versus Gore, we are really up to our neck in political corruption, in right-wing political corruption. And the Supreme Court has been very complicit with it.
I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your time. This has been Representative Jamie Raskin from the great state of Maryland, 8th Congressional District, ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee. I'm going to go ahead and promote his book. It's a great book, Unthinkable. I hope you can come back. I hope you are willing to come back, and I hope we can spend some more time. Thank you to your team for making this happen.
Anytime, Washington. Thank you for the work you're doing. I really appreciate it. Hang tough.
Thanks, sir. Take care. All right, I'll get you off, folks. And folks, I'm going to have Mehdi Hasan on in about 5 minutes. Um, uh, so listen, I had about 20 minutes. Um, I like Congressman Raskin. I think he's a fighter. You do what you can. I gave him for those who joined a bit late. It was a softball and a tough one. I asked him if he has faith in the Democratic leadership. And then he gave an answer, the best answer he could, about people stepping up. I said, I know people are stepping up. I know there's certain governors, there's certain mayors. I know you are. I know there's organizers. I said, what about the leadership, though? And then again, he's like, because the leadership sucks. And then I said, listen, my take on this is Hakeem Jeffries and Senator Schumer, and they're not built for this fight. They're not made for this moment. He did give a political answer, yes. He did filibuster, try it out, but my job is to ask, right? I can't control. I can only ask. I asked again. I did a follow up. I only had a limited amount of time, so I went to then another question, which I think is a litmus test for Democrats moving forward: Israel Palestine. I believe it is important for them, Democrats, to call it for what it is, a genocide. He had the same approach as Ro Khanna, where he agreed with me. You need to end the occupation. You need to have a ceasefire. Netanyahu phase 5 starvation, war crimes, but wouldn't call it a genocide. I made my quick case why I think it's important. But maybe he could get there. Maybe he can. If I had, and then I wanted to ask him another question because I thought, for those who follow me, I said there's two litmus tests, and I talked about one of them, Israel Palestine. The other litmus test, I believe, for Democrats moving forward, folks, is actually corporate money. I believe you have to stop sucking at the teat of corporate money, and you have to call it the oligarchy. And with Zohran Mamdani, I believe he is actually standing for something. And what he's standing for is what the establishment doesn't like, which is why they're trying to crush him. I've heard Schumer and Jeffries be more tough against Mamdani than friggin' Donald Trump. Okay, so if I had a little bit more time, That's the question I want to ask him. I had a little bit of time, so when you have 17, 18 minutes, you try to get as much as you can, but also you want to be substantive. I did want to ask him about what to do because I really do think Donald Trump doesn't give a shit about the Constitution, and he's a constitutional lawyer. So Congressman Raskin, what he said, what the rule of law, the Constitution, we shouldn't abandon it. He made a really good point about the judges who are doing their job. Donald Trump has lost most of these cases, folks. That is true. And the Ninth Circuit and these appellates court, they've been doing their job. But at the end of the day, he's the one who said it. The buck stops with the Supreme Court, and the Republican Party has ensured that the Supreme Court sits there and does their bidding. And so that's why I said it's time for the expand the court, right? Because I think Biden came in a little bit too late towards the end, if you remember, of his administration with his recommendations. And those of us who said expand the court, we were seen as crazy. Well, if you have a corrupt Supreme Court and they are rigged and they have given Trump expansive powers, Jamie Raskin went through it, Bush v. Gore, last year's case. Well, then what are you going to do? You need to be agile. And then so you need to expand the court. And what he said, though, the process of getting there, I agree with. Democrats have to win elections. They have to win elections. And then once the president comes in, the next president, assuming we'll ever have free and fair elections, and they're a Democrat, they got to run on. I will expand the court. They have to run on this. I will stop sending money to Israel. They will run on. I will stop taking money from AIPAC. I will stop a genocide. They will run on. There needs to be new leadership. They will embrace Zohran Mamdani and a Spanberger and Pritzker and see the different type of fighters, but the same type of fighters should be pro-humanity, anti-oligarchy. So, I tried to get as much out there as I could, but, it was what it was. Sometimes you go into these and you're like, come on. Come on, the leadership sucks. And I tried to be fair, folks. I tried to be fair. When I've always said with politicians, I criticize them to make them better. When they do bad, I criticize them. When they do good, I praise them. I don't worship politicians. To me, there are tools. There are tools for the people. If they're a dull tool, our job is to sharpen them. If they're not agile and willing to change, that tool is gone. You work for the people. And let me bring on Mehdi Hasan now. I got Mehdi Hasan, and it actually ties up really perfectly because Mehdi wrote this piece yesterday for The Guardian arguing for new leadership. I think he made a very compelling case. It's in The Guardian. He says it's not just Schumer, but it's Jeffries. And Mehdi brings all the receipts of how Jeffries and Schumer, not just with Mamdani, but going down the list on all these issues, have failed. They've been somnolent. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, even though I'm an English major. They've been sleep at the wheel, comatose. Mehdi, I don't know if you saw, I just finished with Jamie Raskin.
Nice.
Actually, your article came in point. We talked about leadership, and my first two questions were about Democratic leadership. I put him in an uncomfortable position where I mentioned the polls. I mentioned the fact that he did a great job going against Nigel Farage. I said that, people would like fighters like you. Do you have faith in the current leadership? And he gave me a filibustering answer, and then I came back and said, do you have faith in the leadership? Because all the examples that you mentioned were not the leaders. They were grassroots organizations, mayors, governors, right? They weren't the leaders. And he's like, oh, well, I don't pay attention to the polls. So I gave him a softball and a tough question. He's not going to go against the leaders. But I was just setting up our crowd. There's 1,300 people already watching. We're going from Congressman Raskin to Mehdi Hasan. Mehdi Hasan is the founder of Zeteo.
Demotion.
Yeah, it's a fantastic website, and he also just has a great article. He just came out in The Guardian. I'll link to it. Yeah. Please become a paid subscriber to Zeteo. I'm a contributor to Zeteo. I did not get paid to say that. Mehdi, the question that Jamie Raskin didn't answer. Do you have faith and confidence in the current Democratic leadership? Mehdi, I know you'll answer it.
What a ridiculous question, Roger. Do I have confidence? No, nobody does. I wrote a piece for The Guardian this week, as you mentioned, saying Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries need to step down, step aside, let other people take their place. They are not cut out for this moment. And it's not just my view. 62% of Democratic voters tell pollsters they want new leaders of their party. And the reason they say that is because they see these incompetent, feckless, cowardly, cautious, just tone-deaf, unself-aware congressional leaders in the House and the Senate. Schumer lost control of the Senate. So regardless of whether he's a good or bad
bad leader. He should have just gone. If you lose control of the Senate, you should step down the next morning. You lose an election, you step down. We should normalize stepping down after losing elections. He did not. Hakeem Jeffries is obviously a younger man than Schumer, but is in many ways worse than Chuck Schumer. At least Chuck Schumer has a record of, getting legislation passed, some of the Biden agenda done, the American Rescue Plan. What does Hakeem Jeffries do? I don't actually know what he does.
He
He
raps
hasn't.
like this once in a while,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
then he
He
talks
does
about Mamdani.
alliteration. He does alliteration. He has not endorsed Zohran Mamdani. Worse than not endorsing Zohran Mamdani, he went on CNBC and endorsed Andrew Cuomo's shameless attacks on Mamdani.
Yep.
Which, as I said in my piece, can you imagine a Republican leader in Congress going on CNBC, going on live television, and throwing the Republican mayoral candidate under the bus on live TV? That's what Hakeem Jeffries did. It's disqualifying. He is someone
Well,
who has been
Cuomo had
awful.
a good point. Cuomo made a good point.
I wish he'd done it like that. At least it would have been entertaining. He's a little dead-eyed. I mean, don't get me started on the fact that Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer are charisma-free zones, especially Jeffries. You need leaders who are entertaining, who are authentic, who know how to speak like normal people. I mean, look, Gavin Newsom's having fun with his press Twitter account, making fun of Donald Trump. People like it, don't like it, but at least he's trying something different. These leaders in Congress are still playing by old rules. They're still dreaming about bipartisanship. Both of them, Schumer and Jeffries, both still use the B word, bipartisanship, which should lead us to the D word, disqualifying. They are out of their depth. They are obsessed with sternly worded letters. I quoted both of them in my piece talking about the importance of stern letters, tough letters. This is not a time for tough letters. As you and I have discussed, Rajat, for years, Democrats bring a tough letter to a gunfight with the Republicans who bring a rocket launcher. It's insane. And this is not just about big D Democrats. It's about small D Democrats. People who believe in democracy need an opposition party that is willing to fight for that democracy, not surrender Schumer, who kind of rolled over when the government funding bill came along, not Hakeem Jeffries, who throws his own candidate under the bus in New York, who's actually bringing in new voters and young people. It's a real problem.
I told Congressman Raskin to his face that Hakeem Jeffries and Schumer are not built for this fight and they're not made for this moment. I appreciate for whatever good they did, but it's time to move on. They don't have it. They're not agile.
He agrees with you, Waj. They all agree with you. They all say it in private. They all say it off the record. But on the record, they will not go against their leader for obvious reasons.
Obvious reasons. I tried though, obviously, but he didn't. He didn't. Let's just say he didn't have a vociferous repost to my mockery of Schumer.
They're not coming out saying, "What are you talking about? Hakeem's the best." No, they're not.
He kept quiet, and also, I think let's talk about Mamdani real quick, because I think it ties into a question I asked Jeffries. And I wanted you to answer the questions, that I wanted Congressman Raskin to answer. I believe there's two litmus tests for the Democratic Party's moving forward, which reflects directly with the leadership and the failure of the leadership, which shows why a majority of Democrats don't have faith in the Democratic leadership. And number two, why Democrats are hemorrhaging votes, support, and money, have the lowest favorability rating since 1994. I just want your take on this. I think these are the two litmus tests moving forward. Israel, Palestine. In a way that you and me, we've been in this game a long time, never would have imagined that the majority of Democratic voters are calling it a genocide. Majority of Democrats do not want to support Israel's occupation or war. I think a litmus test for a Democratic leader, now a leader moving forward, is, are you willing to call it a genocide? Are you willing to stop sending arms and weapons to Israel? Your take.
Oh, it's interesting you mentioned the polling. 8% of Democrats say they approve of what Israel is doing in Gaza. 8%. Right? In Congress, it's more like, 50, 60, 70, 80. The majority. Catherine Clark, you mentioned Democratic leadership. She came out recently in a district meeting with her constituents, said genocide, accidentally. AIPAC obviously got to her next day. She said, I didn't mean to say, it's not a genocide. It's not my word. So you're right. There are some litmus tests. Think about it this way, Waj. Israel is so unpopular in the Democratic Party, and the genocide is rightly so abhorred by ordinary Democratic voters, that think about a person running for the leadership of the Democratic House or Senate who wasn't pro-choice, who wasn't pro-gun control. Like, they wouldn't make it, right? Those would be litmus tests, because 90% of Democrats have a pretty singular view on abortion, have a pretty singular view on guns, have a pretty singular view on healthcare. Imagine someone running for the leadership of the Democratic Party who took a position on healthcare, on Obamacare, on abortion, on all of those issues that we know are core issues, that was so out of sync with their party base. And yet on Israel, we allow it. Why do we allow it on Israel? Why do we suddenly say it doesn't matter that the Democrats in the House and the Senate don't reflect the views of their members, of their supporters, of their voters? That's a fundamental problem. It's also a crisis for our democracy, that Congress as a whole does not represent the American public. The American public is in a very different place on Israel-Palestine to where Congress is.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's why I think it's a litmus test. That's why I think when people talk about Gavin Newsom as a national leader, what I'm saying is Gavin Newsom,
Has he said anything about Gaza? I don't think Gavin Newsom said anything about Gaza. And Schumer's and Jeffrey, by the way, are two of the most pro-Israeli Democrats. They're not replacement Democrats in the sense that, they pick somewhere in the middle. I'm here. They're there. I'm here. I'm two-state solution. They are hardcore pro-Israel, pro-Netanyahu. I mean, Schumer was in a photo with Netanyahu recently, despite Schumer having called him out. In a photo with Netanyahu, Cory Booker hiding in the corner.
Senator Coons was there. Senator Rosen from Nevada was there.
Klobuchar was there at the
Klobuchar.
Which was so galling because she actually went on the Senate floor and said something decent about Israel-Palestine for once. I think that same week, about not wanting to arm Israel's genocide. And then she turns up at the photo with Netanyahu. Look, they are completely out of sync with their base. And these two men in particular are astonishingly tone deaf on this issue. Jeffries is, you saw what Charlemagne from the Breakfast Club called Hakeem Jeffries recently, AIPAC Shakur, which I thought was rather appropriate. Yes. And Chuck Schumer told Brett Stevens, of all people, neoconservative columnist for New York Times, mentor to Barry Weiss, new boss of all media in this country. Schumer said to Brett Stevens, I see my job as making sure the left stays pro-Israel. Number one, that is not your job. Sorry, that is literally not your job. And number two, you're doing a horrible job of it, thankfully. And number three, morally, how can you say stuff like that right now? Israel is killing kids, shooting kids in the testicles, starving women and children, blocking people from leaving, blocking aid from going in, carrying out what the International Association of Genocide Scholars said this week is the legal definition of genocide. And the leader of the Democrats says, my job is to keep the left pro that country. Tone deaf.
And I think Zohran represents the fear of the Democratic Party, even though he stands for something. And I think on these two litmus test issues, the one, folks, and Mehdi, I'll tell you the other litmus test, and I want your thoughts on this. I think it's going to be Israel-Palestine. The other litmus test, which I think is a gimme, a layup. Even the Israel-Palestine issue with the numbers that you cited is a layup, 92% of your base. Like, the other layup is go against the 1%, go against the oligarchy, go against the billionaires, go against corporate money. That is a layup. It's the message is there. It will get independents. It'll get Republicans. And Zohran Mamdani, who is campaigning on that, he represents this issue on Gaza, where the base is, and against the oligarchy. And look what they're doing to him, Mehdi. Look what they're doing.
So Kathy Hochul, another feckless Democrat, governor of New York, she came out of her way to say, I'm not going to raise taxes on the wealthy. It doesn't matter what Mamdani says. I'm the governor. Good luck with that. First off, I would say that I pointed out in my Guardian column that the very same month that Bernie launched his Fighting Oligarchy tour, which Democrats poo-pooed. You remember Alyssa Slotkin saying, no one knows what oligarchy means.
Yep, I remember.
He's filling stadiums across the country in a way that Alyssa Slotkin can only ever dream of. She can't fill stadiums like that in her own home state of Michigan. So Bernie's filling stadiums with AOC, with Graham Plattner in Maine. They are filling stadiums for the Fighting Oligarchy tour. The same month they launched that tour, Politico reported that Hakeem Jeffries went to Silicon Valley to tell the billionaires there that, look, we're all good. Don't desert us. We're totally fine with you. So the messaging is completely off. The idea that at this moment in time, you should be doing a pilgrimage to the Silicon Valley to appease the oligarchy is absurd. Completely tone deaf once again. Chuck Schumer, of course, has always been, a happy champion for Wall Street in his state. So it's a real problem, right? It's a real problem. It's, again, to go back to the polling. There are very few issues in this country that unite Americans. It's a very divided country. But gun control is one of them. 90% of Americans want background checks. Like, apple pie doesn't rate at 90%. Democrats are on the right side of that one. Abortion rights. Majority of Americans support abortion rights by a big majority. Democrats are on the right side of that. Israel, wrong side, as you and I have just discussed. Taxing the wealthy, the congressional Democrats, definitely on the wrong side. Polls going back 20, 30, 40 years, Waj, show that Americans of all stripes, Republican, Democrat, Independent, if you say to them, should we tax rich people more? They all say yes.
Yep.
Yes.
On Fox.
Should we tax corporations more? Yes. And yet here you have Democrats, Joe Biden, tinkered around the edges, had his kind of minimum tax but they never sold it. They never went out in the way that Bernie is, saying we must fight these people. Remember FDR? FDR in the 1930s said these people The rich, they hate me, and I welcome their hatred. That is the message that Democrats need to do. And this Democratic Party, certainly these two leaders, they are not cut up for that message.
I completely agree. What do you stand for? I was talking to Ken Klippenstein and Francesca right before I talked to Congress Raskin. I said, what do you want him to ask him? And they articulated many of our frustrations, right? Zohran, I told them, and I'll share again with all of you, he stands for something. Whether you agree or disagree, he stands for something. He's willing to say, this is where I stand. And guess what? They're a very popular position.
Super popular. And he's going to win, inshallah, as Joe Biden might say. And once he wins, they're going to throw everything they have at him. When I say they, I don't just mean Republicans and Fox. I mean the Democratic Party establishment.
They already have, man.
A lot of the big donors. No, but they're going to go big, much bigger than we've seen. I think people don't quite realize. They think it's over with the mayoral election, the other way around. Once he wins, these people are going to lose their shit on a level we've never seen because no one's ever pulled off anything like that. You think AOC winning the primary against Joe Crowley was big? This is a earthquake for American and global politics, right? You will have a self-styled, self-proclaimed socialist Muslim immigrant. Everything they said Barack Obama was but wasn't. A Muslim guy from Africa who's a socialist will actually win an election, a major election, an election to be leader of the biggest city in the world, America's most famous city, the home of Wall Street. They won't be able to tolerate that. Again, the they is the establishment, Democrats, Republicans, Wall Street, the pro-Israel lobby, all of these people, Big Pharma. They are going to go after because there's a line that people used to use in the 80s. The CIA used to use it about South American social democrats. The threat of a good example. We can't let these countries succeed because that will show the world there's a different way to run your country other than neoliberal capitalism. So if Mamdani not just wins an election, but is a successful mayor, and let's be honest, most New York mayors are not successful. Most New York mayors end up as failures. Adams, de Blasio, etc. Go down the track.
It's a terrible list of
they end in tears. Most New York mayoralties end in tears. If Zohran shows that he can govern and he can be popular and he can deliver on his promises, that will be earth-shattering for American politics because then you'll have other cities saying, well, why can't we do that? Other states say, we were told that you can't go against Israel. We were told that you can't go against the 1%. We were told that you couldn't run as a socialist. The cracks in the entire establishment will be exposed, and therefore they will do everything they can to destroy him.
I completely agree with you, which is why when people say, it's just New York, whatever, and I say it's what Zohran represents.
Yes.
A brown man born in Africa, child of immigrants, openly Muslim, defying the establishment, despite the establishment. I'm talking about all the establishment, like Mehdi said, throwing Bill Clinton and Clyburn and Lawrence Summers and the New York Times and millions of dollars and Islamophobia and hateful, conspiracy theories. None of it worked. And he's running on a message of affordability, taking on the billionaires, taking on the 1%, right?
But if he fails, they will say, oh, we tried your socialist way. It's dead for another generation. Don't try this again for 30 years.
It's what he represents, folks, which is why he, just like AOC, was so threatening, why Bernie was so threatening. But the fact that if Zohran can win in New York, the greatest city in the world, right, the capital of capitalism, of Wall Street, if he can win over New York and make it better, it brings the entire system down because it reveals that the system is corrupt and flawed. So I agree with you, Mehdi. What you said, I'm going to take it a step further. What you said that they're going to go all out to destroy Mamdani, even if he's successful, I'm going to take it a step further. I believe the Democratic establishment, the leadership right now, which has been groomed by corporate money, will willingly destroy their own brand, their own party, Mamdani, and the country, rather than let this vision win.
Yeah, because they're so tied to this vision. They're tied to their own vision, as you say, the corporate vision, the pro-Israel vision, the establishment vision, the don't rock the boat vision, the anti-socialist vision. There's a clip, if anyone wants to Google it, of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer together on stage a few years back. I can't remember where it was. I think it might have been with Haim Saban, the big donor who says my only issue is Israel, where she says if Congress burned down to the ground tomorrow, the only issue everyone would still agree on is Israel. And I think that the cracks in that Israel alliance that are there. Mamdani said to me a year ago, I interviewed Zohran Mamdani when he was polling at 1% in New York back in October, I think, of last year. And he said in that interview with me, if Netanyahu comes to Israel, Netanyahu comes to New York, I'll arrest him because there's an ICC arrest warrant out for him. And I remember thinking at the time, it's a great line. It'll do well on the left, but, is this guy really going to be mayor? I'm very honest. I didn't think he was going to be mayor. This guy's polling up 1%.
We
He said
interviewed
it.
him on Zeteo when he was
Yeah.
number 2,
Yeah,
distant number 2.
he's in a very different position, but he hasn't backed down from any of that. And that
Nope.
kind of rhetoric scares people, as I say. There is a way to do things. As you say, you talk about the word grooming. Grooming is an interesting word. People are groomed to be politicians in a certain way. They are told and taught to be politicians in a certain way. You must do it this way. And this is where Donald Trump comes along, which is interesting. For all my loathing of Donald Trump and everything he stands for, what he did in 2016 was to say, no, I don't have to do it this way. The Republican Party says, I'm going to do it my own way. So he steps up on stage and he calls out Jeb Bush. He references Jeb Bush's mother. He calls out George W. Bush. I remember sitting on my couch watching that debate in 2015, I think it was, when Donald Trump says, well, the towers came down under your brother. Oof. You can't say that. You can't say that in a Republican presidential. Apparently you can. He sits on stage and he says, well, John McCain, I like heroes who aren't captured. I like war heroes who aren't captured. Oh, that's the end of Donald Trump. It wasn't the end of Donald Trump. He carried to go up in the polls. He came along and said, I'm not going to follow any of your rules or conventions, and I'm still going to win. And he did that in 2016 very easily. And I think that's the lesson for Democrats in 2028. Stop with the old conventions and the old rules. The person who wins in 28 is the person who actually has the courage to say, fuck all that. I'm going to do things my way, and I'm going to win my way.
I don't think that leader has emerged yet. And the thing that they're not
But if
saying,
Zohran wasn't born in Uganda, he would be
could
a
have done it.
favorite the morning
I
after the
agree.
mayoral election.
The word they should be saying, what they aren't saying, is the word genocide. Now, I had another, when I talked to Congressman Raskin, we talked about this as the litmus test. I shared with him all the polls. He agreed with me, much like Ro kind of did when he was on last week. We want the same thing. We agree. And then Ro pushed me and said, well, why do you need me to call it a genocide?
Yes.
And so I gave him the answer, your answer. Why is it so important for Democrats to actually name it? Because Kana, just like Raskin, they agree with us. All right, stop the occupation, ceasefire, no more weapon sales. Netanyahu's a war criminal, extremist government, return the hostages. Awesome. Check. Waiting for the international court to see whether we should call it a genocide. Your response.
So a couple of things on that. One is, we live in an age where we live in supposedly a post-truth era, where Democrats are like, but Donald Trump won't say the truth. Well, the truth is it's a genocide, and truth matters. So it doesn't matter whether it's politically helpful or not politically helpful, whether it stops the fighting or doesn't stop the fighting. Call things what they are, as you say. Speak the truth. And now we have the International Association for Genocide Scholars adding to everyone else who said it as a genocide, from Amnesty International to Bet Salem to Physicians for Human Rights Israel to Human Rights Watch. All of these people who've lined up to say this is a genocide. Doctors Without Borders. So speak the truth, number one. Number two, it's very important here, by the way, that to notice the hypocrisy. A lot of these politicians will say, well, we're waiting for the International Court of Justice to give their ruling. Well, I don't remember the ICJ giving a ruling on the Rohingyas. We call that a genocide. I don't remember the ICJ giving a ruling on the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. The American government's official position under Donald Trump was that there was a genocide in Xinjiang. There was no ICJ ruling. Joe Biden said what happened in Ukraine is a genocide. I don't remember Joe Biden waiting for an ICJ ruling. So everywhere else in the world, we're happy to use the G word quite freely without any court ruling. But in Gaza, where everyone and their dog, the actual experts are saying it's definitely a genocide, where you look at the death and destruction, Ukraine doesn't come close. That's where people are being reticent. I find that disingenuous. I would make one wider point, though, on Mamdani, and someone made this point in the comments. I don't know who made it because it flew by, but someone made the point.
We have a very smart 2,300 engaged audience.
So somebody in the audience posted while you were chatting, and I caught it at the corner of my eye. They said the difference between Trump ran on hate and fear, Mamdani's running on optimism and love. 100% agree. Right? 100% agree with that. But that's not actually as different as you think. I wrote a book, Waj, as you know, called Win Every Argument. And one of the first chapters is about the importance of emotions, right? You win people over not through stats and facts and figures, not here. You win them over here. You win them over in their hearts, right? Democrats for far too long always like, we'll bring a policy paper to convince you. We'll have a statistic or a peer-reviewed research. No, that doesn't work. Hillary Clinton had reams and reams of policy documents, didn't help her win in 2016. What you do is you appeal to people's emotions and hearts, kind of thing that Hakeem Jeffries is unable to do because he's a bit of a robot. But what Donald Trump does is he does it in an evil way, right? What the Republicans do is they appeal to your worst demons, right? They appeal to your fear and your paranoia and your hatred of the other. I'm saying you do exactly the same thing, but just don't appeal to people's worst demons. Appeal to, quote unquote, their better angels. Do hope, do love, do optimism. As you said, Waj, Mamdani is a master of showing what he's for, and he does it with a big smile. You saw that answer he gave on the I've Had It podcast he was on this week, where he was asked about, Cuomo and Adams criticizing him for doing a scavenger hunt. His answer was perfection. He gave an answer about the importance of joy, why it matters to have joy, why working people, they can't just be working all the time. There has to be some enjoyment and optimism and uplift in life. And these people are joyless, Cuomo and Adams. And I think that is the message we need from Democrats.
I'm not joyless. What are you talking about? I'm just here to...
We will win. We will win. Remember that? Schumer outside the Department of Education, I think it was, during the Doge protest.
These guys are failed. They remind me of that Charlton Heston quote when he was the president of the NRA. You have to pry this gun from my cold, dead hands.
Yeah. Well, that's leadership.
But speaking about the change, and I want to stick with this for a second. I'm sure
just very quick, Waj, before I forget. Very quick. I just want to make clear to everyone watching, if people are going to try and do a gotcha thing to you and I next year, I'm not saying the Democrats won't win back the House. It's an uphill struggle. Gerrymandering is obviously going to make it different. But the anti-Trump wave is still so strong that they have a very good chance of taking back the House. I don't want people coming and saying to me afterwards, oh, you criticize Hakeem Jeffries and he just won back the House. First of all, if they win back the House, it'll be in spite of Hakeem Jeffries, not because of Hakeem Jeffries. Number two, as I say in my Guardian piece, I urge people to read it. I'm fine with him leading the Democrats to victory. The question then is, what does he do as Speaker of the House? What vision does he have for America? What vision does he have to stop Donald Trump between 2026 and 2028? What plan does he have to secure the 2028 election? Stuart Stevens, the never Trumper, former GOP strategist, former Mitt Romney guy, he's just written a piece for us, for Zeteo, and he's laid out an exact blow-by-blow plan of what the Democrats should do if and when they win back the House. It means defunding the executive branch. It means defunding ICE. It means holding hearings on corruption and on all of the Trump lawlessness. They have to act like dissidents, not just an opposition party. Is Hakeem Jeffrey that leader when he's Speaker? Nope.
No, I completely agree. And folks, look, for those who have seen me, I give credit where credit's due. I criticize when people need to be criticized. I don't worship politicians. My job is to sharpen them. Our criticism is to sharpen the Democratic Party because it is the only opposition party that we have to a fascist movement. They're playing for all the marbles. Trump is playing for all the marbles. He is literally sharing 2028 hats. He is openly militarizing the National Guard. Stephen Miller has used the word insurrection. What do you think is going to happen? I believe he's going to do martial law.
Domestic extremism. He's called Democrats domestic extremists.
Unhuman, domestic extremists, aliens, invaders, right? So they're going to crack skulls, mail-in voting. They're going after legal voting. They're gerrymandering. They're cheating. By any violent means necessary, I think that Donald Trump will try to remain in power. So you need a robust, legal, joyful response that mobilizes masses. What do you stand for? And this is why, Mehdi, when it comes to, I'll give you an example. Gavin Newsom.
By the way, when you said joyful and joy, I'm the one who brought up joy because I mentioned Mamdani. I mean, Kamala Harris said she was the candidate for joy. The problem was no one knew what she was for. What did joy translate into?
And so that's my criticism of Newsom, right? Because I'll give you my fair assessment of Newsom. When Newsom flipped and invited Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon and Concede to the Talk Mouth, I criticized him. And it was a huge mistake because Democrats still do that. Republican light, be Republican light. Didn't work. So now he's switched, Mehdi. I've given him credit. Okay, you're meeting the moment. All right, you're responding fire with fire. Okay, you're doing your redistricting plan. You're mocking him. Wonderful. He's gone up in the polls. He's gone up in the ratings. The reason why, Mehdi, I think Gavin Newsom and people like him won't be the ones to take that leadership mantle or to really implement the reform, even if Dems win the House and the Senate, is because if he can easily switch in 3 months, that means he'll switch back. And again, what do you stand for, Gavin?
Not just that, but of course, he has a record as a governor of California, and it ain't the greatest of records. He had a chance. He's had unlike Democrats in Washington, he's had supermajorities. He's had huge support in legislatures. Democrats are strong across statewide, and he hasn't used the mandate, the support, the votes, the Democratic presence in California to get shit done in a way he should have done, especially on healthcare, for example, where he had promised big changes in healthcare. And they don't have anything even resembling Medicare for all or even anything resembling what needs to be done on universal healthcare. By the way, someone in the comments just said Kamala Harris didn't have time to lay out what she was for. With the greatest respect, that's not quite true. She did a few interviews, not many interviews, and in the interviews she did, she dodged the question. In fact, when she was asked on The View, one of the most watched shows in the United States of America, what would she have done differently from Joe Biden? She said nothing. That, for me, that was the day her candidacy died.
No daylight, kid. No daylight.
Joe Biden apparently pressured her into not distancing herself from it.
Americans care about security. Americans care about crime. Americans care about immigration. Americans care about the border security.
I mean, they're misled on all those issues, but yes.
Yeah, but Democrats, what do you stand for? Give me a better plan. Give me something that isn't Republican light. Stop being terrified of being called software and crime by a criminal president who's helping pedophiles.
Okay. So Ro Khanna, who you said you interviewed last week, he had a good line at a speech he did recently. He said, look, we must stop, capping our ambitions. We must stop putting a roof on what we think we can achieve. Democrats always say, well, I can't offer a $15 minimum. I'll offer a $12 one. 15's too much. I can't pay for that because they're going to ask me, how am I going to fundraise to cover the cost? Like, fuck all that. Make promises that you think people want to hear, right?
Free buses.
As Ro Khanna pointed, look at Mamdani, free buses, freeze the rent. As Roe pointed out in that speech, Congressman Khanna said, what did he say? He said, Democrats go around saying, can we afford this? Can we do healthcare? Can we do this? Meanwhile, Donald Trump's like, well, I'm just going to invade Greenland, right? That's what we're up against. You're up against a party that says, we're going to invade Greenland. We're going to retake the Panama Canal. We're going to annex Canada. I'm just going to blow up 11 people in a boat with no legal authority and say they were terrorists. They do whatever the fuck they want. Meanwhile, right. Democrats are limiting their ambition, self-kneecapping themselves. That's got to stop. The next Democratic presidential candidate should just borrow from the Trump playbook. I'm deadly serious. He should say that he or she should say, when I'm president, minimum wage is going to be $30. On day one, the minimum wage is going to be $30. And the reporters will say, well, how are you going to do that? How are you going to get $30 wage through the Senate? And the president, that candidate should say, trust me, it's going to be amazing. I'll do it.
Okay, so final question to you, and it's good. It's good unifying question. We have a few people who said, Mehdi and Waj, this is terrible. You're crapping on the Dems. You should unify instead. Why are you doing that? My response to that: I do not worship politicians. I do not bend the knee to any Democratic or Republican party or leader. My job is to use politicians to get the greatest good for the people, Mehdi. If a politician is dull, my job is to sharpen them. The only way politicians change is through pressure, whether it's pressure through the public or money. That's it. Whether it's fear of losing their seat or fear of or hopes of winning their seat, right? They change. I'll give you an example, everyone, because I'm old. I got gray hair. In my lifetime, I've seen two radical shifts that I've never witnessed before. Number one, marriage equality. Obama term one, Mehdi, Democrats are like, gays, we like you. Because of the pressure, 4 years later, Mehdi, what happened? Gays, we love you getting married. First term of Obama, traditional marriage. Second term, marriage equality. Israel, Palestine, my entire life, I never thought a majority of Democrats would say enough to the occupation. Within 22 months, a majority of young people around the world have been radicalized in real time and openly criticizing their party. What did the Democratic Party do under Kamala Harris, folks? I told me and Mehdi told everyone, vote for Kamala Harris. We said, vote for Kamala Harris. The Democratic Party said, shut up. Shut your mouth. Keep your mouth shut about this. We're not going to have a Palestinian speaker. Look how it worked out for them. So that's my response, Mehdi. I want them to be better, to meet the moment so they win. Your take.
So just to be clear, I didn't tell people to vote for Kamala Harris. I did make it clear that Donald Trump would be awful and should not be president and is not qualified to be president. And it's insane to think he would be better than Harris or Biden. But I didn't tell people how to vote. I would say this, though, on that subject. Clearly, we're in a much worse position. And that's why I'm saying people need to take radical steps to win. I think winning is important, right? I think purity tests, all of that stuff is irrelevant. Somebody in the comments said, oh, I would be really annoyed if you promised a $30 minimum wage and didn't deliver on it. With respect, the winning is what matters. What happens after winning is less important. I'm just deadly serious with you. We live in a country where Donald Trump has now won 2 of the last 3 elections, right? That is insane. So yes, Democrats need to change it up a bit and start doing things differently. The old ways do not work. The old times do not exist. You have to adapt, otherwise you die. And Democrats are dying. And to go back to your point, this is a party that is in trouble. And when people say, oh, don't crap on the Democrats, as I say, 62% of Democrats say they want new leaders. This is not some outside far-left critique. This is a critique coming from the base who are frustrated with their leaders and their representatives. And yes, I get the importance.
Favorability rating is under 30%.
Yeah, from their own party. Forget the centrists, forget the swing voters and Republicans. This is Democrats who are frustrated with their own leaders. So yes, you need to hold people to account. Obviously, Waj, you and I are journalists. I am a small D Democrat. I'm not a registered big D Democrat, but I'm a small D Democrat. I care about the democracy in this country. That is my number one goal. I don't want my children growing up in a dictatorship or an autocracy in Hungary Mark II. And therefore, yes, I will call out people who don't stand up for democracy, who do soft pedal fascism, who do try and meet the fascists in the middle and do bipartisan deals with the white supremacists, who don't take radical action. For example, the next time time the Democrats come back into office, if they ever come back into office, take action. Make DC a state. Make Puerto Rico a state. Increase the representation in the Senate. Expand the Supreme Court. Rebalance the Supreme Court. Get rid of the Electoral College. All these things. Obviously, they can't be done overnight, but work towards them as goals. Joe Biden had a chance to fix the Supreme Court. He kicked the report that he did into the long grass because they never took the Supreme Court seriously. Now, the Supreme Court is Donald Trump's best protector. When lower courts shoot him down, as a New York Times piece pointed out today, the Supreme Court comes in and puts an emergency ruling defending Trump. That is where we are right now. So we do have to take radical steps. We cannot fight by the old rules. We have to fight by the new rules. Asymmetric warfare doesn't work. It has to be something where, yes, if they're gonna play hardball, then the other side has to play hardball. I am fed up of seeing people lose to complete idiots. Donald Trump shouldn't be the head of a school board, right? He has no qualifications to run anything, right? The moron said yesterday that if only we'd let the water flow down, the sprinklers could have stopped the wildfires in California. The man is a moron. He should not be in charge of anything, let alone the United States of America. Therefore, defeating him is key.
I completely agree. And folks, the reality is in the Democratic establishment, the leadership, we're talking about the leadership right now. They want restoration. And the reality is that people need reformation. And those who are not willing to
my
deliver,
friend, revolution.
yeah, the people who are not willing to deliver it, promise it, fight for it, they're done. You're about as useful as a second belly button. No disrespect to belly buttons. And I believe Schumer, I agree with you in your thesis that you laid on, and the Guardian, you brought the evidence. They're not built for this moment. They're not made for this fight. And people who disagree with me, I say trust the evidence over your eyes and ears. Donald Trump is unleashing the military and the National Guard against our American citizens. He quoted Hitler in October and threatened to unleash the National Guard against the enemy from within, something that I repeatedly quoted. You repeatedly quoted. We said take him literally, seriously.
He's doing what he said he would do, and we need
And
a better opposition.
I think he's not going to leave peacefully, folks. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I hope I'm wrong. So we need fighters to meet the moment. Mehdi, shamelessly promote yourself.
I'm going to be so shameless on point. Zeteo.com, Zeteo. Head to Zeteo.com. It's on Substack. It's on the web. We're all over social media. Become a subscriber. Support independent journalism. Ideally, become a paid subscriber so we can expand and grow. Check out Stuart Stevens' latest piece. Check out John Harwood's piece that's dropping soon on the fecklessness of Senate Republicans. And read my piece in The Guardian, where I'm also a columnist.
I'll have Stuart on. Stuart was supposed to come on Left Hook. I don't think he has yet. Maybe came on a year ago, but I didn't know he had that piece. That'll be a good piece.
It's so funny that some of these never Trump Republicans, Crystal, Stevens, people I've opposed all my life, are actually telling the Democrats to fight harder than Democratic strategists are telling them to do.
This is where we are, folks. This is where we are. Folks, this has been the Left Hook. Thank you all for watching.
Thank you for watching.
That's Mehdi Hasan. There's no paywalls here. Become at least, if you can, a free subscriber. If you have a couple of money, a couple of bucks after giving it to Mehdi, give it to me. I have more kids, and I drive a minivan. Folks, take care of yourselves. Be kind. And it's important. Mehdi made an important point. A point we always try to make here is we need you to rest. We need you to be happy. We need joyful warriors. This is a long walk, folks. This is a long walk. Generational damage has been done to America. So in order for the long walk to happen, you need to be happy. You need to be healthy. You need to rest. You need to keep your eyes on the big picture. And your children need to see joyful warriors, or else they'll be like, man, my parents are depressed. They hate each other. They're alcoholics. Everything sucks. This is bitter. I'm not going to fight. I'm just going to make as much money as I can. So we need you to be happy, healthy, rest, take care of yourselves, be kind, and please, oh, please don't be a fascist. Take care, Mehdi. Assalamu alaikum.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Assalamu alaikum.